not long after the first of the big generative art systems was released, we all found out how these revolutionary creations got so smart so quickly. Turned out the developers had pointed their indexation spiders at photography archives and used the real photographic work of real photographers to help train and to fine-tune their systems. Some had struck a deal with large stock libraries. Some had simply pointed their crawling photo indexers at the open internet. At no point, however, did the stock libraries or the developers of the generative art systems think to actually ask the people who were creating the work they were profiting from. At least they didn't consider asking for permission until everyone realised what was going on and folks started getting lawyered up. But what you might not know is that even if you've never uploaded a photograph to a stock library, there's a strong possibility that images you've shared online have joined the training databases used to make these systems function the way they do. No matter how careful you are about sharing your photographs, the vast majority of photographers watching this video will have helped train systems that could, ironically, actually threaten their livelihoods. Yes, it's another example of photographers getting treated like complete shit by big business. They've stolen our photographs, and I think we should steal them back. This is a multifaceted problem which has a lot of companies involved and raises many issues. So let me kick things off by explaining the problem. In order to find out whether your photographs might be part of the training data used by generative image systems, pay a visit to haveibeentrained.com. This website searches the Laon 5B and Laon 400M image datasets looking for your name and your photography. These datasets are what Stable Diffusion and many other generative art systems use for training. Other generative systems use other datasets, and so if you don't find any evidence of your photography, that doesn't mean you're in the clear. To begin your search, put your name in the text field. Try both full name and nicknames or your gamer handle if that's what you use to upload your photographs. You'll get a bunch of completely unrelated imagery, but if your search turns out anything like mine, then you're in for a surprise. Over the years, I've uploaded a few photos to stock libraries, but none in the last decade. I've uploaded to Flickr and other photo sharing websites, and I've also sold a decent number of photos to businesses and tourist agencies. Some of the photographs that showed up in the training data under my name were images I licensed to various organisations, and some were ones I uploaded to Unsplash to prove how fucking awful that website is. However, the vast majority of images that are showing up in these datasets were never licensed to anyone. They've been taken from my website, my social media feeds, and my Flickr account. If you have a blog or website, you can also search these datasets for that domain. It turned up 24 images that have been taken without my permission for training generative image systems. For each photo that the search turns up, you can view the domain that it was sourced from. Many of mine were taken from the Australian Tourism Database, which is apparently a big shared media library that all Australian tourism agencies, local, state and national upload content to. When I licensed my images to these tourist agencies, I gave no permission for their use in training datasets. Many of my photos were taken from a disturbingly large number of third-party websites, most of which had no permission to use my images. Somewhat weirdly, even turned up a photograph of myself taken about 30 years ago, a little bit more hair, and I was working as a journalist on computer magazines, and which I'd never seen before. One of the most common sources of imagery taken without my permission was Flickr. And before you ask, no, I didn't public domain them. None of the images I've uploaded there are on a Creative Commons license. Out of interest, I also searched "Have I been trained?" for the photographs of a local photographer by the name of Jordan Robbins. Jordan is an award-winning ocean photographer who takes distinctive shots of marine wildlife, many of which use the cool over-under technique. I found several of Jordan's images in the database, and when I clicked on the link, it showed that the image had been indexed from his own website. So his images have gone into creating systems such as Midjourney, and if someone wanted a cool over-under shot in the ocean, they might well use Midjourney instead of licensing one of his photographs. Do you see the problem here? Jordan's intellectual property has been taken to train a system that could, sooner than we imagine, replace him and professional photographers like him. Like many photographers who upload their work to their website or social media, I long since gave up trying to track down the people using my photographs without my permission. I resigned myself to the fact that once I upload a photo to the internet, it's basically passed out of control, like Sirius Black through the veil. It sucks, but it's just the way it is. I decided to just concentrate on taking great photographs and not spend every waking moment obsessing over the endless abuses of my intellectual property. I have an account with Pixie, the copyright tracking company, and there are over 3,000 positive hits on there at the moment for my photographs. But I rarely bother looking at those copyright infringement hits because many appear on Chinese websites where any kind of enforcement is impossible, or on some obscure travel blog or attached to someone's poxy blog post. So my discovery that hundreds of my photographs have been used to train generative image systems without my permission is just the latest in a long line of abuses of my copyrighted work. I'm as annoyed as fuck, but let me tell you, I'm certainly not surprised. It's my view that in the modern era, photographs have virtually no value, and the companies that harvested my work for their datasets clearly endorse that view. But what I find disturbing is that sites like Flickr have basically been used for free content by these companies. One of the images that turned up in the dataset is a drone photo I took. If you look at my Flickr page for that photo, you can clearly see that it states all rights reserved. So why was it indexed, scraped, analysed and used without my permission? I have approached Flickr for comment, but at the time of making this video I've received no response. If you have photography uploaded to Flickr, then you will undoubtedly discover that your work has been indexed too. Was Flickr complicit in this harvesting of photography, or were they just treated like chumps by the creators of these data sets? Based on my research, I'm going to give Flickr the benefit of the doubt and suggest that the images were scraped without their knowledge. And since we're giving Flickr an out, even though they could have implemented the same anti-harvesting technology that DeviantArt implemented to great effect, let's give the other hosts an out too. That leaves us with the architects behind this massive worldwide image harvesting. So before we get into who I believe is at fault here, we need to briefly discuss the processes they use. The two data sets I mentioned, and which you can search with the Have I Been Trained website, are created by a German non-profit called LAON. LAON is an acronym for Large Scale Artificial Intelligence Open Network. The information within LAON's datasets is scraped from web pages. Their spiders scan HTML code for the IMG tags used to insert an image in a web page. Then it looks at the alt data for that image and uses it as a caption. Then they identify and discard any images where the content doesn't match the captions. The LAON 5B dataset comprises nearly 6 billion images paired with captions. Let me say that again. 6 billion images. 6 billion publicly accessible images that they simply help themselves to. Importantly, LAON do not actually host the images themselves. This is not some virtuous act, of course. It's just somewhat expensive to host 6 billion images, especially if you're a non-profit. But even if they could afford it, they would never store an archive of images because that's how they manage to avoid getting sued by billions of photographers for copyright theft. So instead of downloading the images and hosting them on their own servers, the dataset simply stores the URLs pointing to those images. Anyone that wants to use that dataset to train their own generative image system must then download them themselves. And once the generative image system has been trained, then the end users get to leverage the work of the organizations in the supply chain. Everyone's a winner except for, yes, you guessed it, the photographers. As you can see, this is a multifaceted problem, and there are serious questions to be asked of the companies that create these generative or so-called AI systems. Laon can easily argue that they have done absolutely nothing wrong. The procedures they put in place to create their datasets are in fact not very different to what Google does to create its search indexes. They simply crawl the internet looking at publicly accessible images and then save the resulting linkages in a massive database. They didn't steal the images, they simply pointed their indexation spiders at the World Wide Web and made a big list of photographs and captions. But the thing is, without companies like Laon, the next part of the process is not possible. In this instance, Laon are akin to an arms dealer. They didn't make the guns, and they certainly didn't pull the trigger on the guns, but they did act as a middleman, a facilitator. Without them, none of these systems would be possible. Laon's out is that they are not hosting the images, just links to them. Move along, nothing to see here. These aren't the droids you're looking for. This is true of all the datasets currently available for training generative image systems. That brings us along to the generative image systems themselves. Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, Leonardo, Firefly, etc, etc. And many of these entities did download the images because how else is the machine learning code going to analyze them? In some cases, such as Adobe's, they simply leverage their own sizable stock photo library. I'm not singling Adobe out here, just using them as an example. But when you look at the terms and conditions you agree to when downloading content from their stock library. Section 7.1 of those terms and conditions states that you must not use these stock assets or associated metadata, quote, for any machine learning or artificial intelligence purposes, unquote. Oh, haha, Adobe. Who would ever think of doing such a thing? Okay, I can't use Adobe stock to train a generative image system, but what about Adobe themselves? As the licensor, Adobe retains broader rights to use and reproduce the images than what is granted to licensees. The restrictions in Section 7.1 on using assets for machine learning and AI only apply to the licensee, that's you, and not Adobe. If we dig into the Adobe Stock Contributor Agreement, we can see that it contains no opt-in clauses for photographers to allow AI/machine learning use. Adobe are evidently relying on a broad licensing grant to cover their arse should any Adobe Stock Contributor get lawyered up. Lawsuits are already in progress regarding the use of photographs for training datasets against other companies. The company that did more than most to devalue stock photography, Getty Images, is suing Stable Diffusion's parent company, Stability AI, for allegedly unlawfully copying and processing millions of their images. Yes, Getty, the company that was unsuccessfully sued for selling photographs donated freely to the Library of Congress and put into the public domain. Getty, the company that bought Unsplash and monetized the millions of photographs that gullible photographers had uploaded freely to the service by using it as an advert and upsell platform for iStock Photo. Poor old Getty. They clearly prefer to be top and not bottom. Meanwhile, Shutterstock have decided that if their entire business model is going to be destroyed by generative image systems and machine learning, then they better get ahead of the curve. They just signed a deal with OpenAI, who will license data from Shutterstock, including images, videos, and music, as well as any associated metadata, for at least the next 6 years. Their stock contributor agreement does not explicitly mention machine learning or generative uses, but the now known or later developed language gives them wide latitude for new uses of the content. Section 2.3 of that agreement also states that Shutterstock can sub-license its rights under the agreement, which would allow providing content access to AI/ML researchers or systems. Shutterstock's AI Contributor Fund is claimed to compensate photographers for images generated by their own AI system, but what about the images they're sub-licensing to third parties like OpenAI? Stock libraries aside, it certainly looks like the companies that produce these generative image systems are making some efforts to go legit now. But the fact remains that they already took everything they needed for free. It's all very well saying you'll pull out early next time when you're already lying in the wet patch in the bed. It's not hyperbole to state that they plundered the entire internet, catalogued its imagery, and used it to create businesses for which photographers who made it all possible will receive absolutely fucking nothing in return. So, whether you are for or against your photographs being used for generative art systems, your work's probably in the system anyway. If you upload to stock libraries, you don't really have any get out, but depending on the company, you may get some small, and I mean small, compensation. If you just upload to your website or Flickr or social media, as I did, then your content is apparently considered fair game. Here is a statement of absolute fact. I gave no permission anywhere at any time to any organisation to use my photographs for training datasets. And yet a quick search of have I been trained reveals hundreds of my photographs within the Lawon datasets. Who knows how many others my images have been used by. Lawon and companies like them are operating in an area of law that hasn't been fully formulated yet. They have not contravened copyright laws, but there is no doubt whatsoever that they have benefited from photographers' work. It's pretty shocking. Lawon and the companies that benefited from their massive image datasets could have done the right thing. It staggers me that at no point during some brainstorming session, some turtleneck sweater-wearing intern didn't ask the obvious question. Technically, we can harvest this material, but should we, from a moral and ethical standpoint, do so? Seems to me that morals, ethics and scruples pretty thin on the ground in this whole mess. Lawon make a lot of noise about being a non-profit, but that does not mean they do not financially compensate their staff, does it? I used to work for the biggest non-profit organisation in Australia, and let me tell you, I earned a salary. The people listed on Lawon's team page are evidently highly capable academics and leading experts in their fields. Did none of these self-serving wankers consider the ethics of what they are doing? The DNA of our photographs is in every one of the images created by these generative image systems. Had photographers and artists been given the option of opting in, then this wouldn't have been an issue. Many hobbyist photographers, I suspect, would have freely contributed if asked. But we weren't asked, because seeking permission would have slowed progress, and God for fucking bid, we slow the progress. At no point has any of these companies questioned the morality of their business practices. Photographers and artists have been treated like shit on the shoe of these companies, an unpleasant but necessary component to be consumed and then ignored in their headlong charge into a dystopian future in which creativity is automated. I urge all photographers and artists to use the machine learning opt-out whenever it is available. You can visit Have I Been Trained and opt out from the allow on datasets, though of course that will not affect any company that already use those datasets to train their generative image systems. Some websites such as DeviantArt already block AI datasets. In fact, after listening to their users, all uploads are automatically labeled as not authorized for use in AI datasets. I urge all art and photography websites to follow suit. If you have a blog or portfolio, I urge you to implement the No AI and No Image AI tags created by DeviantArt in your page. You can use these on any website running WordPress or content managed sites like Squarespace. I'll put the code in the description text down below. So, fellow creatives, let this all sink in. In this reckless pursuit of an AI future, the rights of photographers and artists have been treated with total and complete disdain at every level of this emergent industry. And it doesn't take an AI chat system to tell me that the likely endpoint of this machine learning arms race is the elimination of commercial human creativity. Resist.